I saw we can maybe go live. We're live now.
I pushed the button. Sorry.
That's okay.
Was there something you didn't want to share yet?
No, I was going to say I took a look this morning at the visual that you used for the podcast. I love it, the chicken and the egg.
Oh, you saw that?
I did.
Okay, well, okay. That was gonna be my first thing, but anyways, that's fine. Let's check in first, and then we'll figure out what came first.
Oh, I just love the visual. That's all I was saying. Go ahead. You go first. How are you?
I still have whatever is going on. Like I told you yesterday, earlier is better. So try to get in my good brain time before things start to cloud over, and then shut her down. So, other than that, things are pretty good. I feel pretty calm. I got coached a couple weeks ago now on a topic that's been bothering me for a long time, and that conversation has allowed me to relax into a couple of things and then get some balls rolling, and that has made me feel so much more relief than I've experienced in a long time. And yeah, so I'm grateful for that, and I feel like I've been very even since the time that conversation happened, and then the subsequent action that I took. So even though there's basically nothing has happened, if that makes any sense, but it's happened here, and I know there are steps for me to take. So that has just relieved all of it for now.
Yeah.
Even though nothing physically has happened outside of the space that has bothered me for like 7 years.
Which we've talked so much about, measuring what's a good outcome for a coaching conversation. And so many of us think it's the doing part. Mm-hmm. And many times it's the settling part for that person to say, I have a path and I know I can do it. And, that's enough. But we don't often see it physically manifesting.
And I think that's key, because most of what's going on that troubles us is it's all in us. Unless there's a saber-toothed tiger chasing you down, yeah, okay, your problem's external, but what's happening inside is what we typically struggle with. And that's why when anybody comes to me with a coaching, do you coach me? Can you coach me on this? I'm like, sure, because I'm not necessarily coaching that, coaching you. So that's always fun to feel on the other side.
Yeah, our famous saying, you're coaching the person in their topic. They're together with their topic. It's not about the topic.
How about you?
I'm doing really good today. Yeah, I feel good today. The sun is shining. It's Friday. I think I've said that I had a release on Monday. All of a sudden, I felt like I was I don't want to say old self, but I felt like I was settled as well, and being able to do a bit of dreaming a bit more versus just reacting and doing. So it's been a good week. It's been continuous, so it hasn't stopped. So something has shifted inside of me as well, which I'm so grateful for. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to see if I can bring this on screen and not screw it up.
You did it.
Thank you. Thank you, AI, for a little bit of quick help, because I did this in 30 seconds. So, but when you brought this topic up and I had to figure out how am I going to advertise this? I always confuse confidence and competence in the order in which that they come. So for me, it was like, this is a chicken and the egg situation completely. So what comes first, Karen, the chicken or the egg?
Well, for a long time, I really believe that in order to have confidence, you needed to be competent. And I was in a program called Women Leading Change, and we had to bring a breakthrough project, each participant. And the woman, Rayona Sharpneck, who ran the program, she would basically coach you through as you started to develop, what does it look like? What are the results? All the different steps, blah, blah, blah. She would coach, and we got to observe the person being coached. And there was a woman there. There were several women there. So listen to my confidence here, that I thought were like, oh my gosh, they are so polished. So they're professionals, they're in big companies, I'm a federal public servant. I'm trying to figure out who I am, what would be a breakthrough project I could do. So I was already feeling a little bit small. But this woman was getting coached and she was articulating all of the steps, and she kept using the word, and then, I'll have some confidence here, and then I'll do this, and then I'll be confident. She kept using the word through her steps. And Rayona stopped and said, what if we shifted something right now? What if confidence comes first and confidence comes after? And there was just this dead silence in all of us, and including the woman being coached. And she said, let's play with that. Let's play as if it's that way versus feeling this woman who you could see had a very, very competent, wanted to recognize that was important, which it isn't devaluing the importance of that. But what I saw it open up in her, what I saw, how it shifted, how she could approach her, what she wanted to make a difference in, where she wanted to go in her life, the kind of work she wanted to be engaged in, and how it allowed her to be freed up to start it sooner. It was like a 3-year plan that she needed to get to before she felt she could step into her breakthrough project. So it just was a real big awareness that, oh my goodness, confidence is part of the competence process. In fact, it starts there. It starts, and it's so interesting, your introduction about the inside stuff. I believe it's an inner game and inner growth that accompanies you along the way. It's a quiet way. It's not often seen, but it's a way. I'm going to go back to the way of being as you're building your capacities and competencies and fulfilling kind of where you want to contribute or show up in your world. So it shifted me 100%, and it allowed me to be more brave and really believe in myself versus the way I was feeling prior to, hearing that switch. So it really shifted my turn when I came into my breakthrough project. I talked to her about I'm kind of back to zero, because that has really shifted how I'm going to show up in my project.
What was coming to mind, though, as you're describing that, is that I think I've had a definition of what confidence is in a different way. And I think that's what's blocked me. And I think similarly, once I get to this stage of ability, then I'll be okay to do this or whatever. But it sounds like from your description, that confidence is more about the stepping into what it is that you want to do without necessarily having all of the skills around you really well honed. You know what I mean? It's more like just trusting it's going to be okay, and what you have is enough for now. And just putting forth that effort, and then the competence comes with that putting yourself out there, not necessarily being ready before you step in. Because you've said this before as well. You're never going to be ready.
Yeah, I remember a definition of courage being really afraid, but knowing it's the right thing to do. So an example for me after that is I had been away and someone was covering my job. I was a manager in Veterans Affairs. When I came back, I had just started learning some new tools from Bob Chartier, one of my mentors. And there was a big regional meeting, and we had some issues with processing travel claims, staffing. There were some areas where we were really bottlenecked. And we kept meeting every 3 months, and there was the regional office and the district, and there was a big debate, and we were pointing fingers at each other. And so when I came back, the woman that had covered for me, she says, just so you know, I hope you're not mad at me, but I've told them that you're going to do process mapping at the next meeting so we can really figure out, how it, and immediately my, the small talk was, what? I've never done this before, but I had introduced some of these tools, and she had looked in the book and saw it. And so all of a sudden now I'm on an agenda to do process mapping. And I immediately went I can't do that. She goes, yes, you can. You're good at this. Like, I know you. They need you to do this. So I phoned my mentor, Bob, and I said, I have no clue how to do this. And he says, I said, can you tell me how you do it? He goes, well, actually, I haven't really done it. I put it in the book, but it's an idea that I saw. I go, oh my God, he has never done it. But he says, Karen, grab your team. You get into the boardroom. And he showed me the process, what to do, put Post-it notes up and flip chart paper, and he gave me the whole way to do it. And he says, you practice with them. You go in there. And so what great advice. And so I went in and we did some internal, I brought the woman in that volunteered me, and our team did a few process mapping, and I started to get some confidence. Was I 100% competent? Absolutely not. I did it 3 times. So that's what I've got in my competency. So then I did commit to that. And this is really important because there is doubters out there all the time. And I needed 3 facilitators to do this because it was 3 different processes. And so they gave me 2 trainers to do this. And I knew them very well. And so I walked them through the process on the phone. And then the week before I was coming, I got a call from one of the trainers saying, Karen, why are you doing this? You know it's not going to change anything. So here comes the doubter. I said, you don't think the map works? And I had it all typed up. She goes, no, that's not what I'm talking about. This is like, he started to talk about no one's going to listen. No one's going to accept your changes. You're going to do all this for nothing, blah, 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 blah. And I remember sitting there and feeling that confidence little get smaller and smaller. And then I listened to myself. I said, why am I doing this? Why is it important? Why do we need to try to do something differently? And all I said to him was, listen, I'm so scared. I'm doing something I've never done in a big group before. But I'm not looking for a lightning bolt in the organization. I'm looking for a light bulb. I'm hoping that even if it's imperfect, that the conversation that we have, that we've had so many times where we're pointing fingers at each other, I'm hopeful that this process will bring us together and we will come to something at the end. That's my only wish I have, because I know status quo won't work. It's tearing down our relationships. It's not resolving this very, very critical time lag. So I had to build, I went into the inner side of the why for me, and knowing that I was, not 100% competent yet. So fast forward to that story, we did do it, and it was amazing success. Did we get all of our recommendations implemented? No, because we were not the hierarchy of decision making. But some of our things we were able to move forward because they were within our power. But the best part of that 3 days that we spent together was the relationship and the outcomes. And I knew then, even though that it wasn't perfect, I was on the right track. So if I had have been in the old mindset of I have to wait until I have my mastery of this process map, I would have never gotten to here. And I realized from that day forward that this is what kind of living on your edge of development or growth or making something shift, you're going to feel this way all the time. So building that inner groundedness to your why and managing your expectations, that I'm going to learn and I'm going to do the best I can and I'm going to create the conditions for success. I have a saying, this, start small, but don't be small. So yeah, for me, it's the holding back of you can't, we've talked about this, perfection is highly overrated.
Yes. But it's also defined by whom, right? Who's perfection defined by? In my view, perfection's imperfect anyways. It's about being a part of getting on that journey somewhere and being a part of doing it. So what I liked about your story, even though Bob had never done this before, and he's like, yeah, just get a few people in the room and do it a couple of times. that starting small with, okay, I'm going to make a safe little space. I'm going to bring in trusted people. I'm going to try something on. We're going to see if it works, see how it works, and we're going to refine it. I'll do it a couple of times. So I get enough steam up that I can do this with the big wigs. I can do it with the regents. I can do it with them, and we can make this better. It might not be everything that you wanted it to be, and I'm sure there was stumbles and things that didn't quite go the way that you wanted either, but you're doing something, and you're building capacity along the way. Probably capacity that I would imagine has helped you try other things. So I would ask, what do you think that led to for you?
Well, it opened up. I feel like my line was, I'm on the right track. So as as this time in my life was kind of a little bit of a magical period where I had a bunch of interesting things coming towards me. And so I've seen this happen so often, Ian, where we go away and we learn something new. And then we have this amazing learning experience. And then we come back with the binder and we put it on the shelf because now we're back and no one knows what I've learned. So what I realized, you said, what did it do? It opened up the notion that we can't unlearn or learn alone. So it created spaces for me to start to incorporate or include others as I was starting to build some interesting tools and ideas about how do we make engagement stronger in the workplace? How do we have better conversations? So I didn't do it alone. And I said, let's try this out. So I became more risque, I guess I would say that. And made it playful. I mean, remember when we first started out, we invited people to come and play in the sandbox with us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that my goal this year is ease and lightheartedness that I seem to have lost track of in the last few years. Because that's, really, we have to be open, curious, and we need to, status quo is not sustainable. So that was huge for me, right? And then I started doing train the trainers, handing off these tools. And I could see the same feeling and fear in the eyes of the people sitting in the room. So, it was really important for me to level the playing field, that I wasn't this expert. I was a manager. I called myself the recovering manager. Like I used and made people laugh. And I said, yeah, like I had to learn. I had to notice that status quo wasn't sustainable. We had evolved to a different place. There was different expectations and desires about what a manager's leadership skill should be. So this letting go and moving towards and feeling like, yeah, I'm just a beginner again. I'm relearning and unlearning. So that I think it made me realize that there's no expert that's going to fix things. So that confidence of that, it's in, I don't know, I can't explain it. It unleashed me for sure. Look at you and I'm stepping into a podcast where I don't have a roadmap on how we're going to engage. So I'm now in another, wobbly stage of development. I don't know if I answered your question. So I just feel like I know it's necessary to just trust your gut and feel that confidence and practice along the way and get better.
I think you answered and then some. I think it's just part of the evolutionary process. In order for you to evolve, you have to push your own boundaries. And if you never play in the edges that are uncertain, you won't grow those new parts of you. So we've been doing this over and over and over and over again, playing in the edges. I think you've called it edge development before, right? So I referred to it that way. And we're doing that with our work now. So yes, the podcast was my idea, but you're like, yeah, we could try it. Yes, when we started talking, when we went from our government work and started to like play in the idea of what if we delivered this in module format, and it was outside the government, it was people who were just like friends and family and people who, anybody who wants to improve conversations. So we started playing in that. And now we're creating the things that maybe we're sitting on a virtual shelf or in our heads for a few years. And now they're becoming reality. And we're seeing how people are really latching on to, I think, the community aspect of this, and that the growth doesn't have to be what it has been in the past. And we know too that people don't have a ton of time. So 1 hour time slots are like a manageable, it's a lunch break, right? So bring your lunch, have your lunch, learn something, and take something back practical that you can use in your day-to-day life. And this is where our edge development is, trying on new things, trying on a new version. Each workshop now is a new version of what we're trying to accomplish. And are we 100% confident that it's going to work out? More or less, but we don't know. We don't know. Each one is brand new. Yes, there are familiar aspects, but there's always a new part. You're like, I don't know. Is it? Is it going to land? And we won't know until we put it out there. So there has to be at least a level of confidence that we know enough that it's going to be supportive. And if we show up with the right attitude and curiosity about what they're learning and what they're absorbing, we're going to be a part of that process for them too. And hopefully, throw enough stones into the water, the ripple effect that happens, ideally, they take it and run with it too. So this becomes a part of their way of being and showing up and listening to others. So I know I'm tangenting, you're going off on a tangent here, but I think there's a ripple effect to the work that we do. And I think showing up and putting yourself out there, regardless of whether you know it's going to work out or not, is inspiring, I think, to other people.
Yeah. Well, we're practicing what we're preaching in some ways, right? We've stepped into a new space, a different way of looking, delivering our message, our tools, engaging people. So this last year has been our playing ground to learn and learn and learn. There's one other story where I had the privilege to coach a curling team that was going to the Olympic trials. And I was brought in 6 months prior to the trials, which is a little late in the game, right? Because it's a 4-year cycle, but they were ready, right? That readiness. And so I did a lot of work with them, and it was a lot on, because in the higher levels of sports, we know the inner game is so key. I don't know if you watched the Masters last weekend at all. Just watching these high-end golfers, struggling to do a 2-foot putt that they could do with their eyes closed on most days. That inner game is so important. And so the work was, I was not the technical expert, although I do curl. I was helping them get ready for the intensity of what a trial would feel like. One team gets to represent the country to go to the Worlds, right? To the Olympics. So what is interesting is they started to find their own, what was their developmental plan, helping them see their edge development, knowing what they needed to do to have that confidence and competence. Is one of the things we talked about was your performance is going to dig down before it goes up. Now, how hard is that when you're getting into some, events before the trials to work together, and you may be your team development even may go down before up because we're resetting, we're learning new skills. So it getting in the mindset, and that would be my second thing, is that at first you might not feel really good about your performance, but in order to build those muscles and get the repetition, and I'm going to use the third word, to embody them so they're natural in you. First, it almost feels not insincere, but just out of sort. It's not aligned to who you are because you're building a new muscle. So so you have to go through that. So that was really hard for them to accept that was going to happen. And I get it, and I didn't blame them, but I wanted to prepare them for that mentally. and it worked really, really well. But we had a feedback model, which we're going to teach that. So when they came through, they could measure what was going well. So they could see their growth, but they could still see the wobbly part. And they had a way forward to self-correct that. So it was really amazing to, before the trials, to hear them speak and what was inside of them and the readiness for them. Although not feeling 100%, who ever does, when you're going, but they felt more ready than they've ever been. So I think that's really important for us to understand, especially when we're doing what we're doing is building this capacity to go out and practice it with others. Is, there's always going to be that feeling, but making sure you ground yourself in, I practice, I understand this, I know what it's like, I know why I'm doing it, to really ground yourself into your why, so that, and I'm not going to be perfect, and I'm going to, slip off the tracks of coaching, and that's okay, because that means I'm a real human. It also means I'm practicing.
And I think that's the whole idea of the practice. We don't get good at anything unless we practice. So yeah, who cares? You make a mistake and you slip out of coaching and you give advice or whatever the case may be, right? It's like, when you start noticing that you do the things that you do, you can start to make corrections. Okay, so I definitely gave advice this time. What could I do next time when I get that urge or whatever? So you can start to integrate your practices into your day-to-day life without a ton of stress and pressure. Like, it's not like these people aren't your clients. They're not paying you to help to help you get to them to a goal necessarily. So, but if you're conscious of it, you can start to make that course correction. And it takes practice.
Well, we talk about practice makes permanent. That's the embodiment part. So, and you can slip out of practice even when you're a professional. You're having a rough week. You don't kind of reset your body before you go into that coaching conversation. And all of a sudden you notice you're overtaking the conversation. Oops, my energy's too high. But I just love the idea of, understanding that, it's okay. This is the journey of development. And to, enjoy the ride and start small. Don't be small. Like, give yourself a practice.
I think it's important that people understand, and you said it, like when you were coaching the team, you got them to think about it from a perspective of, I'm learning. So there's going to be dips. But a lot of people think that their progression is a straight line and you can see it visually. And there's always an image in my head, and I've seen it several times, where you see a person here, and then you got the goal here, and then there's straight line is what we think, but there's often all these other loops and dips and whatever is considered to be going backwards. But a lot of those steps have to happen for you to get from A to B. So for you and the curling team, they needed to go through a cycle of not being as good performance-wise to mentally be good to get there. So there's so many different parallels with this. I mean, I took golf lessons for a short time, and I had to let go of old habits in order for the new habit to be the dominant one. So I had to be okay with, even though, I remember them changing my grip, and when I changed my grip, I'd get a couple good shots and then I'd have 10 bad ones. But if I could get that grip to be consistent, the good shots would be more, I would be more consistent with my shots. So I had to let go of the fact that I got really good with a bad grip and got a pretty good score. And then I got a good grip, but a shitty score. And I had to be okay with that, because I knew the end game was something else. But as I got more practice, built up the muscle memory, and my alignment got better, my score got better than it did when I was good at a bad grip. Does that make sense? So your team had a bad grip. Then they had a good grip, but they had a bad score for a while. Did they make it, by the way? This is my own morbid curiosity.
No, they did not go to the Olympic trials or the Olympics. But from their career development or in their coaching development through their continuation, they have shared with me over the years that has really helped them accelerate in their curling capacity. Mm. I mean, it's quite a game, right? It's only one winner. But I love what you just said was, and I think it's really important to manage expectations, because you talked about the end game. And so all you can do is be ready. And then everything else, there's a whole bunch of other things outside of your sphere of influence that, can take. If you get, I talk about this all the time, even in the work we do, when I would do, facilitate a team on a team charter or on a process mapping. I had the greatest roadmap already. It looked beautiful on paper, and then the people would show up. I always say to people that we're learning the tools and learning to do, a design, that the design holds the time and the space and the rigor, but you have to be nimble, because people are going to come in. There's going to be something that happens. So it kind of helps you retool, reconfigure. It's easier if you have a plan and to adjust versus going in thinking this is a perfect plan, because I say then those people show up in the room and they're humans and you don't know where they're going to go. So it's like anything about the game, right? Any game you're in, anything that you're doing where you're doing some kind of leading. The second thing I love is the fact that you use the practice of the grip. I had to let go of my old grip. It's almost like, which is so true. Hanging on to something that's comfortable and kind of isn't too bad.
I did great with what I had.
Right? But the inner knowing of, I know that if I shift this grip, and practice this and start to get comfortable here and competent here, it will help my end game. And that's what I love about, this game. You were stretching yourself to the next level, which I think a lot of confidence and competence, most of when you're working with people, they're trying to elevate somewhere, somehow to somewhere. And they know they need to grow their capacity or grow something, a skill, or change something in order to get there. So I love the idea of loosening the grip. I had to actually change my grip on my past and find a new comfort in how I was holding my club. I haven't changed mine yet, by the way. That's the one thing I haven't changed. I've done a lot of changes, but the grip I haven't let go of yet. Maybe this year you're encouraging me to try to do that.
Well, if you can let go of the expectation that the score matters,
yeah,
and you're trying to get better, then it's up to you. What are you willing to let go of? If you're not willing to let go of the score, okay, great. But if you are, and you want to be more playful, right? I played with a friend. This just reminds me, and he is not a good golfer. Sorry, buddy, you're not good, and I know that. But the day that we got together and played golf, and we got maybe 3 or 4 holes in, and he's like, I'm not keeping score anymore. I don't want to keep score. He played so much better after he let go of the score, because it didn't matter anymore. I was there to spend time with a college buddy, shoot some balls, and have a beer or two, and enjoy each other's company. That's what was important. But up until then, every time he had been golfing, the score was what mattered. So when I get an 8 on a par 3, it's a big deal. My whole life is over. Like it's ridiculous. And it depends on your outlook and your expectation of what you're looking at. So yeah, being able to let go of things and see what's important to you. So what I get out of all of this is being really connected to why it is that you're doing what you're doing. And then being willing to find some place to practice, to feel like don't start small. Don't start small, but don't be small, right? So do something, and then step into something that's maybe a little uncomfortable, but is going to help grow your development. You never exactly know where it's going to lead.
Yeah, and I would just say for me, and I love everything you just said, is it's a quiet inner energy. It's not this, we often hear, confidence. It's right in here. It's just I know I've done the work. I'm learning. I'm practicing. I know I'm on the right track. I'm gonna, remind myself why I'm doing this for myself and others. So I love all of that. Just that inner sense of, it's an inner confidence that people see on the outside.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Chicken or the egg? Which was it? Take care, everybody. See you next week.